Greetings and welcome to Elect Connect, the candidate forum brought to you by the Bloomington Chamber of Commerce. I'm Mary Morgan, the Chamber's Director of Advocacy and Public Policy, and we'll be joined today by Al Mans, who's a candidate in the Democratic primary for Monroe County Circuit Court. First, I'd like to give a shout out to the Elect Connect sponsors. We're very grateful for their support for this work. The sponsors for Elect Connect are German American Bank, Bunger and Robertson, the City of Bloomington, Hoosier Energy, Smithville, and Indiana University. And again, we're going to be joined right now by Alphonso Mans. He likes to be known as Al Mans. He's going to be in the Democratic Party primary as a candidate for Monroe County Circuit Court Division 1. Welcome, Al.
Welcome. Good morning. How are you this morning?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
We'd like to begin by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in running for this office.
Okay. Well, I've lived in Bloomington now for over maybe 40 years, and I've been practicing law for about 35 years in Monroe County. I came here as a law student for our Monroe School of Law, and I graduated, and I accepted a job here at the university as Director of Human Relations, and I took that job on for 2 years. At the end of my tenure there, I recommended to the university to accept the whole idea of diversity as an educational philosophy and policy for the university. That was an accumulation of my work of studying about the work of Herman Wells and other people who were involved in the development of the school. Nevertheless, I continued in my education here and got a master's degree from School of Public Environmental Affairs. And then I began to practice law in Monroe County in 1980. I did some more work at the Political Science Department as well. I'm now taking some online courses from Walden University dealing with public policy and administration. I enjoy practicing law. I've enjoyed it. I have a family with my wife, Dolly Stafford Mans. My kids are all grown now. I have 5 children who all attended schools here in Monroe County. We participated in school activities and I've been very active in the community in that regard. I'm less so active now because I'm kind of trying to focus on this classwork I'm engaged in, but still I still function as a representative of for example, the Kiwanis Club and other organizations which I'm associated with. But anyway, I love this community. I've been here for a good time and I've enjoyed living here.
Mm-hmm. Great. You've touched on this a little bit, but can you tell us how your particular background and experience makes you best suited for this role?
Well, I have degrees in law, science, and public policy. The course, I noticed that you have on your sign Division 1. Actually, the position that I'm seeking is seat 9. That would probably be on the ballot that way.
Wow.
Nevertheless, that's the position in which Judge Elizabeth Cure is vacating at the end of her term. Nevertheless, in that particular division, it handles mostly cases involving guardianships, matters of dealing with matters. I'm sorry, I'm somewhat distracted right now. Dealing with personal matters which involve guardianships, adoptions, things of that nature, which I am very familiar with in my practice of law. So I think that I'm more qualified than the other candidates who I understand is a good friend of mine. He's a friend, not a good friend, but a friend of mine, since he's been doing work mainly in the area of, there was a prosecutor, which he does admirable work. But I think I'm more qualified to handle because I had a diverse practice of law. I've also done a practice of law in the federal court. I've handled cases criminal and civil. So as well as appellate work as well in the district courts and Indiana state courts. So I think I'm more qualified to handle those as a judge in this court.
Okay. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing our local judicial system? And how would you address those challenges if elected?
Well, without actually sitting on the bench and knowing the inside of what goes on, I can only give you a perspective from the outside. And over the years, I've had a good relationship with, I think, all the judges who have served on the bench and who's now retired or going on to other positions. But what I do learn that the thing that's important for all of us to understand is that judges are fallible human beings, but they're trying to do the best job they can to make good decisions. I have no experience of a judge who has not demonstrated his ability to comply with the oath. And even though lawyers sometimes are not as honorable as I would expect them to be, most of us are. We try, particularly in Monroe County, I think, to adhere to certain principles in which governs our relationship in the courtroom, which is very important. But I do think that we now have an increased usage of the system by pro se litigants who do not use lawyers. And as a consequence, the court has to kind of, while it cannot advise the pro se litigants, it must guide them through their litigation opposed to each other in a way that is honorable and with dignity, as to not to offend them in any way, but try to apply the law appropriately. And then at the same time apply empathy to both parties, or all parties to the case, and resolve it based upon principles of law. If, unfortunately, we have a concern, I do have a concern about truth in our system. I have truth about what comes out in journalism. I have concerned about truth coming out in our court system. Truth is important. And the point is that we have a way of trying to decide these matters within the rules of law. If we are guided by the rules of law of ethics, we have a way of deciding what's credible and not credible. But I would never accuse a person of giving false testimony. But I would consider the fact that the testimony is not credible for reasons that I found by listening to the parties, looking at the other evidence in the case, and make a decision.
Okay. As you know, jail overcrowding has been an ongoing issue in Monroe County. What would you do from the bench to address that issue?
Well, of course, I understand that there is a federal law that governs our situation in Monroe County, and I do think the judges are trying to comply with that law. The issue about overcrowding has been one around for a long time. But the point is that we must decide who should remain in jail and who should not. Public safety is a primary concern for the judge who handles criminal cases, such that those who are violent offenders have to be placed in incarceration to protect the public. Non-offenders should be allowed to have alternative ways to be rehabilitated. Of course, the offenders violent offenders should have to be rehabilitated as well. But now we do have a post-trial proceedings in which we have a way of assessing the necessity of leaving a person in jail before they are tried in their cases. This has seemed to me has worked pretty well. And so we have a way of doing that through the probation department and monitoring people who are able to go through that process and who agree to it. That keeps the attendance in the jail down. And I think that it has substantially come down since that program has started.
Okay. You know, obviously the circuit court doesn't operate in a vacuum. What changes do you think should be made in the community more broadly to support the judicial system? And related to that, what state level changes do you think we need to advocate for?
Well, the community like Bloomington or Monroe County has many services and the court takes advantage of that. They use those services. It helps the judge decide what to do as an alternative for sentencing, for example, serving people with drugs, people who have drug addictions and things of that nature. We have those things, and we ought to think about that, and oftentimes the court uses those services to deal with problems. The statewide system we have is not so much concerned about what we do locally as to the passing the law. The legislature, I assume you're talking about, and the legislature just recently passed modified the criminal justice code a couple of years ago. And we've changed the level of sentencing, the level of offenses and things of that nature. I guess it's too early really to understand that. Nevertheless, I understand that we do have a study that was conducted by an organization, or a couple of organizations here in Bloomington. I have not seen those studies or the results of those studies. It'd be very interesting because I would like to know what do they see as a problem in our community. First, you have to identify the problems, of course. And what are the solutions to those particular problems? Oftentimes, the problem is a question of money. It's just that you don't have the money to do certain things. For example, if I've seen the court grow from 3 judges to 10 judges in our bench. I've seen the courthouse, or our jailing facility, I should say, from 1 to 3 cell facility to I don't know how many, a very large set of jails cells. So, and then the money has to come from the state as well as the community. So our taxes are going to go up if we add another judgeship. It's going to mean paying not only for another salaries for a judge, but also a court reporter or 2, as well as a prosecutor, perhaps, for the prosecutor's attorney in terms of criminal cases. But it takes a little money to manage these things properly. And as in the healthcare system, we're going to be using more technology to do things. It was foreseeable years ago that we would be doing teleprompter kinds of conferences. We would be using audio as well as visual, as we're doing now with Zoom. I suppose we may someday even televise our courtroom activities so that people can see them. But that's going to take a lot of management in terms of technology. And we do have at the Supreme Court level a judicial technical system. There are people who concentrate on this kind of stuff. So it depends upon where we are going with that. These experts, how they see our system growing. We've had some changes over the last few years, as you probably know. We now file pleadings electronically. We now respond electronically, and we can pull off the pleadings and things of that nature online. But at the same time, that doesn't seem to have reduced the paperwork. We still do a lot of paperwork to maintain the files. But then you also have the problem of scam artists trying to interfere and affect our system. We have to be sure that we protect our information as well as the proceedings.
Okay. Outside the legal community, I think it's fair to say that many people aren't familiar with the Monroe County Circuit Court and how it operates. What would you say are the most important things that the general public should know about the court system locally?
Well, I think they ought to be aware of the fact that there are alternative means of resolving disputes, and they ought to use those. And the reason for that is because you're more likely to get a result that's more favorable to you. If you go before a judge, the judge has to decide one way or the other. Somebody's going to lose, somebody's going to win, and unfortunately, that leaves this taste in people's mouths about the court system. But at the same time, the judges are trying to do their best to ensure that you feel that you've had your day in court. I've had people say that I've lost, but I've had my day in court, and I'm satisfied with that. They do want to resolve. They want the courts to make a decision and expect one. And if you come before the court, respect the judge as a person who is your public servant, who is serving you, which you have asked to serve you in a manner in which you want a decision to be made regarding a factual dispute between you and someone else. If you look at it that way, it's much better. And you can resolve it by maintaining peace in our community.
Well, that concludes our questions. Are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Well, I just want the opportunity to serve my community in this capacity. I've tried before and have been unsuccessful. I love this community, and I assure you that if I am elected to this office, I will do the best job that I possibly can do. And I want to thank all of you for listening to what I have to say.
Great. Well, thank you again very much for sharing your time with us. As a reminder, we've been talking with Al Mans. He's running in the Democratic Party primary as a candidate for the Monroe County Circuit Court Division 9 race. We corrected that. Apologies for that earlier error. Once more, we would like to thank our sponsors for Elect Connect. Without them, this work would not be possible. So thanks to German American Bank, Bunger & Robertson, the City of Bloomington, Hoosier Energy, Smithville, and Indiana University. And finally, we would like to really encourage you to vote in the primary elections on June 2nd. All registered voters this year are eligible to vote by mail, and we would encourage you to do that. You can find more information at monroecountyvoters.us or on the Chamber's website at chamberbloomington.org/2020-primary-election. Thanks again for joining us.